So, Chukat, our Torah portion, begins with the law of the red heifer. Has anyone heard of this law before? Probably heard of red heifers before, but not necessarily this law for good reason. Because the Parah Adumah, the red heifer, is judged to be the most incomprehensible law in the Torah. The rabbis debated it, and they decided this law for this week's Torah portion is the one that makes the least sense of all. It has become the classic example of a chukat, a statute, which we often understand as a law with no reason, that no one can understand in modern times. Other chukim, like this law, are things like the prohibition against mixing wool and linen. Doesn't really make sense. Why can't you plant two different types of grain in different parts of the same field? According to the Torah, you can't. We don't really get it today. The red heifer ritual itself is designed to allegedly purify a person who has just had contact with the dead. The ritual involves taking a red, unblemished cow that has never worked and ritually sacrificing it in a very intricate and specific way with ashes and with water. The red heifer is slaughtered, its body and blood are burned in a fire with specific woods and plants in that fire, and the ashes that remain are then burned, after that burning, are used to mix with water and create a paste that is then sprinkled on the person who has come in contact with the dead that will somehow purify them. Taken at its surface, it doesn't make any sense at all. It appears to have no connection to its purpose. I have no idea why a red cow in particular would be burned with certain woods, and that would mean purification. So needless to say, this is one of those laws of the Torah that we no longer practice and have not practiced in quite a number of centuries and millennia. When the ritual is introduced in the Torah even acknowledges in our Torah portion that it doesn't make sense. The Torah says, Zot chukat haTorah, which roughly translates as, this is the most choky chok of the Torah, the law with the least amount of reason that we are going to give you out of these 613 commandments. The rabbis have a lot of different opinions about why we have this law. Some claim that we simply are not capable of understanding the logic behind this whole category of laws. But they make sense to God. They can't make sense to human beings. We don't have that level of understanding, but God gets them. These rabbis say that God would never command anything without reason or purpose, and that we can't aspire to have that level of understanding. God is God, and we are humans, so we should not let these laws bother us. Just, okay, cool, God understands them, we don't have to. Others claim that these laws actually did used to have rational purposes, but they no longer do. We just have lost the reason behind them to historical context. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks asserts a totally new way of explaining these laws, and especially the law of the red heifer that we encountered this week. In his view, chukim are commands deliberately intended to bypass the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, and hit a different part of our soul. The root of chok, or chukim, is chet kuf kuf, which also means engraving, to engrave onto something. And Rabbi Sacks believes that this whole category of chukim, these rituals, like the red heifer, are intended to cut beneath the surface of our minds, to dig into our subconscious, and to help us cope with the uncopable in ways that we can't understand, to help us heal from trauma that we experience that we just can't put into words and for which there is no explanation. In modern times, we don't practice the red heifer ritual, nor can we understand its meaning, but we do have the ability to understand what it might mean to bypass our prefrontal cortex and let something engrave in our souls. So, taking away from this week's Torah portion, the next time that you feel like you've encountered something that takes your breath away, that is too difficult to understand, like those individuals who got purified through the red heifer and just encountered the dead, I encourage you to try to find your own red heifer ritual. Turn off your rational brain. Ignore it entirely. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? What do I need to cope with something that is simply not copable? The answer may seem silly or self-indulgent or surprising or just make no sense, like the red heifer, but I encourage you to try and listen to your gut and to see what it tells you and what that results in. Drive to the beach, put on that song you loved in high school, order an indulgent meal, start knitting, whatever it is your soul tells you to do in that moment, for whatever reason or lack thereof, give it a try. Ignore how others would perceive this self-guided, self-created ritual. Suspend your own judgment about it. What you do doesn't have to or should not make sense outside of that moment, just like the red heifer, to anybody or yourself. That's the essence of this red heifer ritual, and it's often what grief and encountering these horrible things, the most primal rendering of our soul, demands of us. It's only by giving ourselves the space in the ritual that we need in these difficult moments to process tragedy that we all too often experience that we're able to move forward and begin thinking about how to repair the pain that we see around us and to lead with love like our Torah portion teaches us.
יישר כוח.
Thank you.